That is what they are supposed to be, impartial in the discharge of their duties. They don't do that. So I think the MPP's solution to this was that you bring in a special prosecutor who would be independent from the Attorney General to be able to take on what they call politically exposed persons.
Okay. But before this, there were so many times that people called for the decoupling of that ministry. Would that have solved this problem?
I think ultimately that has to happen because that is a constitutional fix to the problem. So you can realize that even in the design of this particular statute, there was some sort of legal engineering that has to be done to make sure that Article 88, which gives the powers to the Attorney General, is giving full effect, but at the same time, the Attorney General does not have any interference with the special prosecutor's powers. So that required a lot of rethinking about how to design that in the statute so that you don't offend the Constitution. Some people still think it's not sufficient, but it does show you that ultimately we have to amend the Constitution to make that even stronger.
Okay, now I'm still going to stay with that office. There are some who believe that, in fact, knowing what Mr. Martin Amidu had done in the past, he's the right person for this office, and so we would expect that he will lead a team that will properly prosecute cases, whether it's within the NPP or without the New Patriotic Party. But do you feel that this office is the remedy to bringing down corruption to minimal levels?
It's not. It cannot be the panacea. I think everybody accepts that, and even in the crafting of the legislation, there was pains to make sure that it can coordinate with all the investigative and prosecutorial bodies that are already available. But because of the context I gave you, you needed a trigger in the system. The system had become stagnated. People, the institutions that are supposed to work are not working. So you needed something to give it some renewal. And I think for me, in the interim, that is the special prosecutor's responsibility. And if you got somebody, it's rare in our public life that when somebody's name comes up, everybody can say that that person is honest or has integrity. Like informally, sometimes when a person's name, you hear all kinds of things being said about that person. But this one, across board, in everybody who knows Martin Amidu can attest to the integrity, and not just in recent times, that they've known him for years. So that, for me, if you are in that kind of a crisis, and I think we have a crisis with corruption in this country, it's become very pervasive. If you have a crisis, there can be no better man than somebody who has demonstrated this kind of integrity and commitment to fighting corruption over the years. So that, for me, he's the man for at the right time for this office to do the work that it needs to do. I think another person who's, whether we got it by accident, is Mr. Dom Leveau at the Auditor General. So I am excited by the fact that you are seeing a certain institutional renewal within the anti-corruption agencies because of the leadership. So Martin Amidu coming into the fray, for me, just even strengthens what we really need to do to fight corruption, because it's a very difficult thing to try to prosecute people in government, or pass, because people say it's witch hunting, and then it becomes partisan, and you never really get those who are, stealing state money.
Now, also, I mean, if you look at the Martin Amidu we all talk about, that he's very honest, you can tick all the boxes for him when it comes to integrity. And then you look at the Auditor General as well, who is a par with Martin Amidu in terms of integrity. They will be working with institutions.
That's right.
Mr. Amidu, for instance, will be working with a lot of these institutions that are supposedly there to fight corruption. But in the past, we have said that these institutions are very weak, and there had been calls to strengthen these institutions to carry out their mandate. Now, for him sitting there as one person who wants to fight corruption, and for these institutions that are still weak, how do we convince ourselves that we are on the right path?
So what has been happening, whether it's Yoko or even Shraj or even in the Auditor General, is that it's not that they don't do the investigations. Sometimes you get political interference and stop this or stop that. But when they even do it and they forward it to the Attorney General, you don't get any action. So the blockade is really at the Attorney General's side. So bringing a special prosecutor in whose responsibility is corruption, and it's been defined which remit that covers, really helps to connect these dots and unblock the channels. So I'm sure, Yoko would tell you there are cases where they're still languishing at the Attorney General's office that have not been prosecuted because of the same old problems we have. It might also be that the Attorney General doesn't have enough lawyers and so on and so forth. So it provides in the law, in the Office of Special Prosecutor law, that it can receive cases from, cases relating to corruption from the Auditor General, from Shraj, because even Shraj, when Shraj does his cases, he forwards it to the Attorney General. And if the Attorney General doesn't act, then nothing happens. So I think that particular issue is important. If that special prosecutor is active, I think it makes the other agencies also active, because they are encouraged that if they go do the work, they would get somebody that is pushing that work for them. And I think it would be so important to changing the narrative where people feel like, well, they can do these things and there's no punishment. I think already just people is looking at the vetting. I was at a meeting today where somebody was complaining that these days he has to be very careful, public servant. He has to be very careful because Amidu's he doesn't know what Amidu might be doing. But it's just that psychological change.
I saw a very interesting comment on Twitter the day he was being vetted. The gentleman said that if Martin Amidu assumes office, you should even be careful if you find money on the floor because he'll come up to you. I just felt that, so this man has created an impression.
Can you imagine, even just that restraint? I mean, if you read the Auditor General's report and the disallowance of 5.4 billion, that the systematic problems that are there, I mean, if you have people being sanctioned, all of that behavior will stop. So for me, it's a sea change with Martin Amidu, because people know, you can't have a side conversation with him. I mean, even at the vetting, you can imagine that things he was openly and plainly speaking about things. So I think that is critical. I mean, some people are raise issues about his temperament, for instance.
Yeah, I'll come to that in a bit. Okay, but before we go to that, there's also the issue of excuses, or is excuses the word I'm looking for? They talk about constraints, financial constraints, logistical constraints. Would you be disappointed if in a few months you hear the Special Prosecutor's Office complaining about these things, that because of A, B, C, D, we are unable to discharge our duties? I
mean, I am in civil society, and I maintain that these institutions are not going to work if we don't keep a focus on it. I think, fortunately for us, this is a new institution. We should engage in it. We should monitor it. We shouldn't. The good thing is some of the provisions that were put in this particular statute is new compared to what has happened in the past. So the special prosecutor has to publish, I think, every 6 months, cases that they are dealing with, the status of cases, and so on and so forth. That is not done. So if Yoko is investigating cases, you just don't know what Yoko is doing, BNI or any of these investigative bodies. So I think there are innovations in this new legislation that give citizens the opportunity, at least, even if just taking an interest. What is the special prosecutor doing? What is he doing? Does he have the resources? If he doesn't have the resources, we need to demand and make sure he has the resources.
Okay, and that's where civil society institutions like this and the media come in. And I know CDD, you're doing something on corruption.
That's right.
I mean, so how are you positioning yourselves to deal with the special prosecutor?
So I mean, one of the interventions we have is the Corruption Watch, where we also and the whole idea, as coming back from the same context we're talking about, making sure that the media can have a sustained focus on corruption issues. So if there are cases that the special prosecutor are handling, we want to make sure we are tracking it.
Right.
And because we're able to do that every week, you know, if something we want to be able to, so that the special prosecutor also know that the public is interested and they are tracking. If you look at what happened with the Oyome prosecution, at some point, lawyers are not attending, you know, court. We don't want that to happen. That's why we are keeping an eye on the National Communication Authority case,
right,
to make sure that at least the state does this job. And if the judge decides differently, that's fine. But we have to put in the effort to make sure. So we think that all of this is coming together at the right time, and it's really a call to action for civil society, for media, anybody who really wants to fight corruption in this country, to take an interest in what these agencies do.
Okay, we'll be taking a break in a bit to welcome Dr. Dominic Ayine, a former Deputy Attorney General. If you have any comments, feel free to send them to us. Hashtag is State of Affairs. If you have any questions for my guests, they'll be very happy to answer them. And I also want to know your thoughts about the Office of the Special Prosecutor. If you think it's a panacea for corruption. We'll be right back. This is State of Affairs. Okay, the cough there was from Dr. Dominic Ayine. When we come back, we'll get into the discussion. This show is brought to you by Verna Natural Mineral Water. We'll be right back.
Autistic children dreams come true during Verna Mineral Water rebranding launch.
Most of the times people ignore such kids and they tag them as evil kids or they are cursed and all that, but that's not true.
Putting a smile on every child's face, regardless of their condition, is a major responsibility of our society, and I am pleased to be a part of this today.
In this life, the best thing you can do is to make someone else happy, or basically make people around you happy.
Drinking and buying Verna mineral water, you help many people out there, like our beautiful sisters over here, and all the many people that Verna mineral water helps.
Here we go. Purchase a bottle of the all-new, sleek and stylish Verna Natural Mineral Water today and support a worthy cause. Verna Mineral Water, changing people's lives.
Revitalize your body with Master T. Reduces stress, improves your sleep.
Do you really want to keep your job?
I try, sir, but always wake up feeling very tired.
Don't you drink Master Tea?
Master Tea.
Master Tea is a food supplement formulated to improve sleep, reduce stress, relax muscles, invigorate the body for good health and vitality, giving you a fresh start for the day.
We love Master Tea.
Now available at all pharmacies, filling station shops and shopping centers nationwide. Contact Medimosis in Accra, Kumase, Tema and Strazako. Master Tea, another quality product from Medimosis, not suitable for pregnant women and lactating mothers.
Master Tea, invigorate the body for good health and vitality.
Mofra won di enfiedu watch. And we're drinking sports beer. I don't go bitters. Edemufua.
I'll bring the money back, or we deal with it. I don't want to talk I was Minister of Interior, so I know the security and intelligence methods of doing it. We will use these methods. So those who think that they've hidden something abroad, maybe they don't need to approve me. Because if they do, I will find it. I have the capability. I've done it before, and under my if you approve me, it will be done.
Right, so that was Martin Amidu at the vetting a couple of days ago. In the studio with me tonight are Dr. Kojo Asante Pumpuni. He's a senior research fellow at CDD. He's a big man there at CDD. And also joining us right now is Dr. Dominic Ayine. He's a former Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, and he's just joined us. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have been talking about the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Since you joined in very late, I'll just give you a few minutes to share your thoughts on the office. We are basically asking if it's the panacea to corruption in Ghana.
At the risk of sounding very cynical, I do not think it is the panacea. It will greatly assist in the fight against corruption.
Okay.
Because now we are looking at a specialized agency that is focused on corruption and corruption-related matters, according to the statute. You know, so because of that specialization, you know, specialization brings about efficiency in delivery and so on. I think that that is probably the greatest strength of the institution that we are creating. Okay. You know, having said that, I think I was eavesdropping on some of the, you know, comments that Dr. Asante was making. We need to be careful that we don't create this institution, deprive it of resources, and then make it another EOCO or another SRAJ. That is where I have my greatest fears. Because you see, once you don't have the resources to prosecute, building a docket, okay, requires a lot of resources, painstaking investigation, and by the police, and by a multiplicity of institutions that will bring together the evidence for purposes of, you know, prosecution. And you know that the burden of criminal, you know, I mean, it's a very criminal, you know, prosecution is very, very high. All right, it is beyond reasonable doubt. So once there's a shadow of doubt in the evidence presented before the tribunal or the court, then you have to it will have to inure to the benefit of the accused person. So we need to do our best. We've created an institution. We need to then give it ample resources to be able to deliver. Anything short of that, you can put, I believe, Jesus Christ himself, you know, in that institution. He would not be able to perform the miracles that we want, you know, to perform. And I think that corruption, as Kojo has pointed out, is one of the biggest problems that developing countries face. It is not only a situation where resources are wasted, you know, through private, you know, philandering, all right, but they are also shifted out of the jurisdiction. They are shifted out, you know, if you have, you know, the empirical evidence, okay, of the capital flight associated with corruption in developing countries. It's mind-boggling. There is no reason why we should be where we are in terms of our development, in terms of our resource limitations, you know, but for the fact that we have the phenomenon of corruption, you know, which is eating away a greater chunk of the resources that, you know, we have for, you know, the development of our countries. So for me, I am all for it. We had a different strategy in our manifesto. We wanted to create a unit that is specialized within the DPP's office, you know, staff it with investigators, because one of the biggest problems we had at the AG's department when I was there was the fact that we had to deal with the police building dockets based upon which our prosecutors would then go to court. And you had situations where the dockets would come, and then you find that there is missing evidence. Missing evidence in the sense that your evidence that is contained in the docket, you know, has, loopholes, all right? And then you have to send the docket back to the police. And, you know, for some, and I was the one that my boss, you know, Honorable Mareta, put in charge of prosecutions. So I saw all the dockets. And I could meet it on a docket, having read the memo by, let's say, the state prosecutor, and then we would send it back to the police. And it would take 3 months to come back.
3 months?
Yes, 3 months, sometimes even more. Sometimes if it was, you know, really a case that we want, I mean, we had great interest in, you would call the police several times, you know, to bring that docket back to the AG's department, and it will be a tussle.
Oh, and what exactly was inhibiting the return of these
they also
documents?
had their own resource limitations.
Right.
All right, there were times that they would give excuses like you know, lack of vehicles and other resources. For instance, testing of, say, narcotics. All right, if they do not have the laboratory equipment to be able to do it quickly, you have to just wait until such a time that either the Standards Authority does it for them, and you cannot be sure of the integrity of the testing process because they have
into concrete.
Well,
like,
I mean, I have to say so.
Well, at least we have evidence of that it's happened before.
Yeah, so basically, on a more serious note, we are looking at a situation where if the office of the special prosecutor does not have the resources, does not have the personnel, does not have the expertise, okay, it will turn out to be another ordinary institution that we have created, and we'll just have created jobs for people to do.
Now, Dr. Asante Popuni, what if he talks about the police sometimes not being forthcoming? I mean, the Special Prosecutor's Office will be working with the police as well. So there is a danger that we could be missing quite a lot of things and time as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are all discussions we went through when we were trying to craft this legislation.
Right.
And I remember, I think we used words like, you know, the special prosecutor can direct investigations, and there's a special provision to ensure that there's cooperation. Even the board is meant to be a coordinating board. So on the board, you have almost all of the principals in the investigative sort of prosecutorial bodies on the board to, you know, facilitate that coordination. So, I mean, for me, it's all about accountability and transparency. We from the start, this office has to be as transparent as possible to help them, you know, if they're having issues, that we can highlight it because there's a political promise that we want to fight corruption. So if you mean it, if you really want it to happen, then you have to provide the resources.
Right.
So you cannot leave that special prosecutor without investigators. You cannot leave them without forensic experts, all of the things that will make that person work. So I think if it's going to happen, then I believe watchdogs like us, the media, have to take an interest. Otherwise, as Dr. Aini is saying, it would become, we would have wasted all our time. And it's a lot of work. I mean, a lot of work has gone into trying to get this. And we haven't even done the setup. We even have regulations that have to still be developed to really elaborate the powers of the special prosecutor. That is really going to be the main sort of tools that he needs. And we haven't even done that yet. So there's still some way to go to set this up and make it work and function properly.
Okay. Now, I want to move away from the office to focus on the man, Martin Amidu, because after the vetting, there were a lot of talking points. Some talked about his character. Others described him as very arrogant. There was a point when, in fact, Mr. Honorable Kennedy Japon said if he were the chairman of the committee, he would have walked him out because he felt he was too arrogant and couldn't even take jokes. And then there was the issue of the age of Mr. Martin Amidu. I want to start off with the age matter because I've seen some lawyers as well, even outside Ghana, reining in on that conversation about his 66-year-old, age.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. You know, when we were crafting the bill, the Office of the Special Prosecutor Bill, we put in a provision that equated the special prosecutor to a Court of Appeal judge. The retirement age for Court of Appeal judges is 70.
Okay.
All right. So it's possible that there was some thinking behind it that the person to be appointed will be retiring at 70. All right. But this wasn't carefully thought through because the tenure of office is an exception to the terms and conditions of service. It says that except that you know, he will be a Court of Appeal judge, except that, you know, he will have a non-renewable term of 7 years. All right. So the letter of appointment or the instrument of appointment will state that you are hereby appointed to be the special prosecutor of the Republic, and that your appointment takes effect, let's say, from the 15th day of February 2018, and will terminate on, you know, the date that falls on the, I mean, that brings it to the seventh year. All right. So we did not think it through in terms of saying that he has the same retiring age as a Court of Appeal judge. Right. Okay, so but it was, I think the thinking was that by reason of the equation, he would be a Court of Appeal judge. But my thinking is that the way the law stands now doesn't make him, doesn't confer on him a retirement age of 70 years. That he's still a public, you know, I mean, the special prosecutor, I'm not talking about Martin Amidu. The special prosecutor is a public officer under Article 199(1) of the Constitution, which, you know, stipulates that a public office holder retires at a mandatory age of 60 years of age. Right. All right, and that there can be an extension, that is in the context of Article 199, specifically Clause 4. There can be an extension for 5 years. Okay, I mean, and the extension is usually a re-engagement of 2 years and another 2 years and then 1 year. Right. Now, if you go back to the legislative history of Clause 4, it is very clear that the makers, the drafters of the law that amended the Constitution in 1996, intended to ensure that expertise is retained in-house. Okay, expertise and experience is retained in-house in a public organization when there is shortage of expertise, and then the more experienced ones are retiring. They can be retained for 5 years. But the drafters of the bill were very, very categorical in saying that there can be no employment in the public service after 65 years. All right. So, on the basis of the fact that the Honorable Martin Amidu is 66 years, he turned 66 in September last year, I took the view that he cannot be employed in the public service because he's above 65. And, you know, it is as if he's being brought back from retirement, you know, into an active job, right, you know, that is going to take him 7 years to do. Right. Now, I've seen a lot of people making arguments about the fact that he's a Court of Appeal judge and therefore he can retire at 70. Anyway, the Solicitor General under the Legal Service Act is also equated to a Court of Appeal judge, but she retires at 60. All right, our, you know, former Solicitor General, Mrs. Gezi, Ama Gezi, just retired at 60. Though under the Legal Service Act, she is the equivalent of a Court of Appeal judge. It's the same with the Director of Public Prosecutions. Okay, they are all equated to Court of Appeal, but they retire at 60. Okay, so this is the basis of the action that I took, and basically what I'm asking the court to declare is that he's not eligible, you know, because of his age. That is all. It's a very simple matter that I want the Supreme Court to delve into.
Your thoughts?
No, I mean, it's before the Supreme Court.
Yeah. So, I just wanted to say that we can't discuss the merits. You know, when the suit was filed, I got called by a number of stations, and all I did was to walk them through the statement of case that we filed, just to explain so that at least there's no misrepresentation. But I won't make any value judgments with respect to whether or not this is a meritorious or unmeritorious you know, suit.
Yeah, I mean, and then for me, of course, the timing is unpleasant for those of us who you know, want the office to work, because I mean, these are important questions to be, you know, who is a public officer under the Constitution, who is in the public service under the Constitution, and therefore by implication, you know, who needs to retire at what time. Because actually, if you look at the number of people who are past retirement age, who are holding CEO positions of public corporations, and this is, you know, we've been doing this for quite a long time. So it has very wide implications on quite a number of positions. But yes, I mean, we'll be glad to hear what the Supreme Court has to say about it.
Absolutely, we can't wait.
Yes.
Anyway, now let's move on to his character. For those who say that on that day he exhibited so much arrogance, I mean, what did you make of his demeanor in answering the questions from the committee? Some say that he was disrespectful to the committee members.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know him personally, but as I said, he's. I understand he's stubborn. He's opinionated. I think from his articles and so on, you understand that that's somebody who always has an opinion. Sometimes I think because he's familiar with quite a number of the political actors, it's almost like he's having a conversation with them in his home. And I think you could see that familiarity, you know, and maybe he also has an old-fashioned sense of hierarchy, you know, I'm an older person, you're a younger person,
me some respect.
you know, that kind of. So I mean, I see all of that coming out in the, and I think some people took offense to that and so on. The most important thing, I mean, Dr. Ayini, who's been a Deputy Attorney General, you know, what is required for this kind of job? Because, you know, all the things people say about Martin Amidu, the point is that he's not going to be judge, jury, and prosecutor. Right. If you take a case to the court, it has to be sound enough. You have to be able to go and prosecute the case. And if you are successful, you are persuasive, you know, you succeed. So I have no fears that the system will discipline. If you don't do the right things, you will not be successful. And I think that kind of constraint is there. But it's important that he needs to be able to work across the entire system of criminal justice. So it's important that your relationships that you build with other institutions will make you also successful. You get good investigations and so on. So if there is a challenge there, he has to recognize that if he's going to be successful, then, you know, he needs to deal with these issues if he has them. But as I said, Dr. Ayini probably would have better insights because maybe he knows him more personally than I do.
Dr. Ayini.
Well, one thing I can say for Martin Amidu is that he has integrity on average. Okay, I'm not saying that he's an angel or someone who cannot be influenced or manipulated by other persons higher than himself, but he's generally someone who has integrity, right? And he's very focused and tenacious, all right? So he's probably cut out to be a prosecutor because for a prosecutor you have to display a certain amount of tenacity, right, in the work that you do as a prosecutor or maybe even a defense lawyer, right? I mean you at night when you get an idea that gives you let's say the solution to the puzzle. You have to wake up and work, and he's that type of person, all right? The only thing that I was surprised about, and that, you know, set me thinking about his character, the honesty and integrity and so on, was when he conceded that all the articles he wrote against the former administration and especially against His Excellency President Mahama were based upon perception. Okay, because for me, I wouldn't utter an article calling someone a looter, calling someone a corrupt person who is stealing the resources of this country, unless I have credible evidence, you know, of that having happened, you know. So for me, that was what I mean, watching him on television admit that, you know, it was all based upon perception, made me, you know, kind of think twice about, you know, his integrity and his honesty, and whether or not at that point in time when he was writing those articles, he wasn't being influenced by factors that had nothing to do with, you know, I mean, a commitment to fighting and ensuring that a corrupt government was voted out of power. Because if you say it was all based upon perception, and you soil the reputations of many of us who served under that regime, okay, and I'm sure there are people in the former administration, okay, who have more integrity than Martin Amidu, all right? Yet we were all lumped together and then branded looters and thieves who were creating and sharing the resources of this country. I wasn't worried. I wasn't worried. I don't want to be, to talk about myself on TV, but I wasn't worried. I never, slept and thought about being arrested for corruption and so on and so forth, because I did my work, just as I was, in line with the dictates of the law and the ethics of, being a deputy attorney general, assisting the attorney general in the execution of, her functions. So that was where I had issues with his character, But of course, we all have character flaws, from time to time, depending on the situation in which we find ourselves, and maybe that is what happened to him.
Yeah, perceptions are.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of have a different take about perceptions and issues like that. I mean, I can't recall exactly his words, but I know it's been debated. Honorable Kujato was talked about these issues, and I think members of the NDC in particular who felt slighted by these kinds of statements. I mean, I'm always careful. I think you can make an argument based on perception that is based on inaction. So if you thought that the government was not dealing with corruption, you can make an argument that this government is not interested in fighting corruption. Right. But to directly say the person has done this, then you have to have some evidence. And even when it gets to that, that's why I have a problem with when the president says that you have to bring evidence, because I mean there's a difference in terms of hard, court type evidence to go and secure a conviction. Right. People might have suspicions, and that is why, and I'm sure the president himself, when he was going around making claims about corruption, it's only when he got into government that he said people have to go and investigate. So you might have some suspicion that somebody has done something, and maybe you don't think people are acting or reacting to it, and therefore you make a case that, oh, this person is not really interested in corruption. So I really, sometimes we've gotten into this thing that every government, every head of state, I can remember, if you bring me the evidence, and then I would, yes, that's true. I would investigate. So somehow we have to separate, because we have whistleblowers, we have, and most of the time, people bring you all kinds of documents and stuff like that, and you just pass it on, hoping that something would trigger. So I don't, as I said, making a categorical statement that somebody has done ABCD is different from saying that, well, from your actions, I can perceive that you are not interested in corruption. That I think is fine, but I think the categorical statement is problematic.
All right, let's quickly hear what people think about the Office of the Special Prosecutor.
He shouldn't look at which party gave him the position, but when A is A, he should be A. When B is B, it should be B. We should be truthful in Ghana. It's been long overdue. The truth is shadowing a lot of things in Ghana. So if he can stand and uphold the truth, I think Ghana will move on. He should make a difference.
Going back to 2017, I feel like the 2.5 million cedis bond, which raised a lot of concerns, should be looked at. I'm also looking at the scenario whereby you look at the current trend, which is the $100,000 to sit by the president.
I think that the appointment of Mr. Martin Amiju is okay. For me, it's okay. But my worry is his problem with the NDC guys, you understand? So if you not use it as a revenge against the NDC people, then it's okay. He should, prove what he's made of by not only arresting or attacking the NDC guys alone, but he should also go into the MPP. They are in power now, and they have the chance to steal more now. Then he should be able to arrest them. If he's doing both sides, then we will judge him by what he's doing.
Oh, to me, if he's giving an approval, he should start from the grassroots. Anybody who owns the state property, he has to collect it for the state.
Right. Those were some views from some of our viewers. Let's quickly take some of your comments. This is from Abbas Haruna from Kumeru, who says, Nanaba, I don't see Martin Amidu and his office doing the magic. We have the Attorney General's Department, which has the prosecutorial power to prosecute all cases. And for many years, this office has failed to do its work for the people of Ghana. I must say that Martin and his office is just an addictive? Okay, I don't really understand what you're trying to... yeah, I don't understand. Anyway, Dopes Khalid Ismail says that Martin Amidu is my man. He's so bold in all aspects. He doesn't fear any man at all. What a great man. Kofi Yabwa says that hopefully if the office is allowed to operate independently without interferences from the government, it will succeed. Kelvin Mawunya Ashong says that this is a national canker. We must all come together to fight corruption in our small ways. What we need right now is attitudinal change. I think the office of the special prosecutor is a panacea for corruption, and it's really going to help in the long run. Time will tell. Anyway, let me quickly go to my timeline. I see some of you as well posting comments there. Quickly read them out here. There was, okay, I think I've gone offline, but there was a question for you, I saw briefly, asking how often at the Attorney General's office do you get executive or political interference in your work, in the discharge of your work?
Well, we were part of the executive. Okay, so the Attorney General, as a minister or cabinet minister, is part of the executive. Right. Now, if by executive interference you mean a call from the presidency or the president to drop a prosecution, we never experienced that. It never happened in the 4 years that I was there.
Did you fail to prosecute a case because it involved one of your own?
There was never such an occasion. People thought, for instance, that in the Smarties case, you know, that is the Bass Branding case, there should have been some prosecution. But you would recall that in that case, we investigated and then we recommended that there should be a refund. Okay, because in criminal prosecutions, you usually have two, you have the intent to commit the crime, right. All right, and then you have the action that constitutes the basis of the crime. So once you talk to people and you realize that the intent wasn't there and that this was out of some kind of a negligence on the part of a state official, a refund is probably the better solution than to just say that you press charges, when there was no intent to commit a crime.
Okay. Now, Dr. Asante Pumpuni, you find this one interesting, but I still have to run it by you. Martin Ansah wants to know how civil societies in Ghana are going to put pressure on the special prosecutor and this government, considering that most of them are NPP friends.
Oh, why did you say that? That was going to be interesting.
Yeah, well, because I knew it was interesting.
Well, Dr. Aidi is my friend, so that's me. I have friends, across the political divide, but I think anybody who knows me, it's really about Ghana.
Yeah.
This is the work I choose to do. I'm really interested. Then the fight for me, corruption is a big thing. I think if we can try to deal with it, it will be better off for many Ghanaians. So no, we will deal with anybody, whether it's MPP or NDC.
Well, to be fair to them, it is under this government that they set up the corruption watch.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me take another one. Isaac Nana says that I think Mr. Martin Amidu spoke a lot with emotions rather than capabilities. I'm beginning to lose hope in him. Well, I'm not too sure what you're talking about, but yeah, I just had to read that one. Engineer Ano says that Nanab, I'm very happy about the office of the Special Prosecutor's Office. What I am not too sure about is this government's willingness to fight corruption. Can you find out from Dr. Ayine how independent he thinks this office can be?
Well, the independence of the office is guaranteed by statute. You recall that there was a lot of debate as to whether the office of the special prosecutor can be independent from the Attorney General, since the special prosecutor derives his power from the Attorney General. Okay, so what we tried to do in the statute was basically, to kind of substantially ring fence the special prosecutor from interference by the Attorney General. But then there's a line of accountability towards the Attorney General in terms of reporting. That is the extent to which we could go, because we could not go further without be acting unconstitutionally. Yes. Okay, so that's where we stopped.
Okay, I'll take the very last question for you, and then we can take a break. Solomon Osei wants to know if Martin Amidu is approved and he decides to retire at age 70 whilst in office, what would it mean for the office and legally?
The deputy acts.
Right. Yeah, the deputy under the statute, the deputy will act until a substantive appointment. Is made by the president.
I think within 6 months.
Within 6 months, I think. Within 6 months.
Okay. Now let's take our very last break. We'll come back with our gentleman here. Stay with us.
Autistic children dreams come true during Verna mineral water rebranding launch.
Most of the times people ignore such kids and they tag them as evil kids or they are cursed and all that, but that's not true.
Putting a smile on every child's face, regardless of their condition, is a major responsibility of our society, and I am pleased to be a part of this today.
In this life, the best thing you can do is to make someone else happy, or basically make people around you happy.
Drinking and buying Verna mineral water, we help many people out there, like our beautiful sisters over here, and all the many people that Verna mineral water helps.
Here we go. Purchase a bottle of the all-new sleek and stylish Verna natural mineral water today and support a worthy cause. Verna mineral water, changing people's lives.
Mofra won di enfiedu watch. Ewo drinking sport beer. Adonko bitters. Edemufua.
Welcome back to State of Affairs, brought to you by Verna Natural Mineral Water. Now, we've been talking about the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Let's quickly go to Twitter and check out the responses to our poll earlier. We asked, could the Office of the Special Prosecutor be a panacea to corruption in Ghana? 61% say that it's too early to tell. 29% say it is. And 10% say no, it isn't. So yes, 61%.
That's a good poll, I think. I'm glad that Ghanaians are sort of, sober, measured in their expectations.
They're adopting a wait and see, attitude, and I think that is.
But I think they should join in. They shouldn't just be on the sidelines watching. They should be demanding and.
Okay, I mean, for you as a civil society person, how do you expect the citizenry to join? I mean, you are there, the media is there, but for citizens who are scattered all over, especially on social media, how do you bring them in?
So one of the things that we will work on is basically it's an OSP sort of watching, because we want right from the start to be engaged with the Special Prosecutor's Office. One of the things we're already going to do is to disseminate the actual, break down the statute, because it's a very technical thing. But people just need to understand the extent of the powers, what the Special Prosecutor can do, and so on. That is a way of connecting citizens to the office, and also making sure that the reporting mechanisms, their websites, their, So there are many civil society initiatives that citizens can, join. But the special prosecutors' own information platforms also can be, they should be accessing and checking, what's going on with this special prosecutor. So I think there are different ways in which citizens can participate and ensure that the office works, make sure the office is accountable.
Okay, I'll quickly take some questions from our viewers for you. Inseidu in Winneba says, Nana, can you please ask Dr. Pumpuni Asante if it is possible for the Corruption Watch to travel to other regions and use local stations instead of sitting in Accra and using big media houses?
No, actually, we are going on a roadshow very soon.
Okay, so there you go.
So I don't know which region he's in, but
he says Winneba, Central region.
So yeah, you will see us very soon. But because, as I said, the timing is right. But there's a lot of petty corruption as well. A lot of our citizens engage in petty corruption. Yeah. So it's not just about the big corruption. If we are going to be all men and women of integrity, we have to also start looking at those little corruptions. We are stealing from each other. So that is the kind of message we also, when we go on the roadshow, how do we stop that? How do we ensure that people are not paying all these facilitation payments when they go and get public services?
Right. Okay. Kwesi Mensa Jokonu. Nanaba, find out from Dr. Ayene how he thinks, having worked at the Attorney General's office, how he thinks lawyers there can be empowered to do their work efficiently.
Oh, there are a number of ways. For instance, law has become, easier with technology. All right. With the internet, search engines, provide quick solutions to, legal problems. So one way, of empowering them is to provide, computers, to provide, high-speed internet services, to
and these are non-existent?
Well, yes, to a large extent. Okay, because we had a legal sector reform project that was being funded by donors, including the UNDP. And one of the things that we wanted to do was, I don't know whether the project is still going on, but we wanted to give the prosecutions division, for instance, access to computers and, high-speed internet services, subscribe to legal materials such as Westlaw, LexisNexis, and so on, so that they can be, they can have access to case law, precedents from other jurisdictions that will help them in their work. So that is one way of, empowering them. Of course, conditions of service is also another way. They need to work in a very, congenial environment. They need to be well paid.
Private sector is very lucrative.
That is, so you find that. No, but to be honest with you, the state attorneys are actually very well paid.
Are they?
And yeah, they are very well paid. And because of this equivalence thing, you have principal state attorneys being equated to circuit court judges, chief state attorneys are high court judges, and so on and so. Chief state attorneys are actually, high court judges. Okay, so the conditions are not that bad. Okay, but we used to have a lot of industrial strife.
Yes, I was going to cite that.
Yeah, but it's very interesting that they've stopped going on strike now. I don't know whether it is for political reasons, but yes, they
maybe you were not treating them well.
That is not true. The conditions are still the same now, and I'm wondering why. I keep asking why they are not on strike and wearing red bands.
Great spirit.
No, the reason is simple. You see, they have things like clothing allowance, fuel allowance, and so on. That used to delay.
So everybody wanted NDC out of government then?
Well, I don't know about that, everybody, because we got a substantial number of votes. At least I won by 72% in my
Congratulations, Dr. Ayede. And I hope that in 2020 you go
it will
further.
Be about 85%.
Amen. Amen to that. Amen to that.
So yes, back to the working conditions. These were the petty things that used to delay and that caused them to go, on strike. But I think that by and large, in relative terms, their salaries are really, good compared to even some of the private law firms. In private practice, you don't have usually a very stable, income.
Okay, yeah. So the
but
commission
you can
get
become a
big case.
rainmaker, one big case, and then it compensates for loss of regular or steady income for a long period. So
but
that is it.
One of the things I think we've not done well is really tracking resources progressively. Like when the Attorney General say complains, for example, about not having lawyers, there's really no good system for saying, okay, this is what the AG's office needs. And to be able to do ABCD, per year, how are we progressing?
Right.
And so it becomes very haphazard. Sometimes they get an increase in their allocation or disbursement. Sometimes it doesn't.
And I have to say that look, the AG's lawyers are hardworking. Okay. And they were, or they are usually unfairly criticized. Okay, because I worked closely with some of them, and the number of cases that one attorney has to handle,
right?
Okay, is too much. Even in private practice, you don't find lawyers handling that much. A number of cases. The problem is that there's everything wrong with our republic. From these assemblies to public corporations, they are end-running contracts, they are doing the wrong things and being sued left, right, and center. And so, every suit comes to the AG's department. All right, so at the time we were there, we had about 99 lawyers, at headquarters.
Right.
All right, that is between civil division and prosecutions. So you can imagine the work,
pressure.
The pressure, okay? And you go to places like WA, and you have just one state attorney, one or two state attorneys handling the entire region. All right, traveling, from WA to Laura and to Nandom and so on and so forth. It's just too much.
Right. Okay.
So
that's interesting. We have to end the conversation here, but a big thank you to Dr. Kojo Asante-Pomponi, Senior Research Fellow at CDD Ghana, and Dr. Dominic Ayine, former Deputy Attorney General and Member of Parliament for Bolgatanga East, who won convincingly. And hopefully in 2020, it will be better than what he garnered in 2016. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Have a good night. Thank you for watching the show. Have a good night. We'll see you on Tuesday night, but enjoy the rest of the programs on this station. Have a good night.
Everyone, my name is Ridwan Karim Dini Osman. The very best gift you can give to anybody is by donating blood to save a life. That is why I'm entreating everybody, all the people who follow me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, to join me on the 24th of February at Achimota as I help in donating 100 pints of blood to save a life. Join me as we do this together.
Hi everyone, it's your stereo queen Regina Van Helvet. Now, a life may depend on a gesture from you, and the finest gesture anyone can ever make is by donating blood to someone who is in dire need of it. And that is why I'm entreating all of you to come through to the Chimota Retail Center on the 24th of February 2018, 8 a.m. sharp. Now, I see the love you show me on social media every single time on Instagram, Facebook,